What's up, everybody? We're on a podcast now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the future of the Little Nightmares franchise. This is a video I like doing, specifically with franchises. We just got a new one, and I don't want to completely forget about it or anything. I thought it was honestly a really solid time, and I maybe even want to do a video down the line on the story, which I actually think was kind of better, at least to me, than maybe the general consensus of it was. But I want to start here. I want to talk about what we could get, or maybe is this the end point for the franchise, kind of go along that train of thought. So, well, hey, let's kind of start there, right? Would this be an acceptable end to Little Nightmares? Now, look, maybe it's the consumerism in me. Maybe it's like this, buying culture. Like, I'll just take anything that I can get. Although, look, I do have standards, and I do, I don't want to buy garbage or anything. I will always take more. And I guess, there's definitely a caveat there where, again, like, I want quality. I want that if you're going to make another Little Nightmares game, there needs to be a reason to do it, right? It's the same thing for like having a movie franchise on like the 6, 7, 8, 9 time, right? Like you need to have a reason to come back. As long as that reason is acceptable, and as long as the consumers, will accept it, or I will accept it, I would support that. And I do think Little Nightmares has kind of that box checked where, like, is there a reason to make another game? Look, the world is actually quite big, and you can really do kind of anything. We've seen, I would say, 2 different ways of approach, even though there's been 3 games. We've seen like 1 and 2 kind of share that through line, whereas 3 really takes this idea, and even to get a little into the story of 3, right? More of like imagination, still power, still kids with powers, right? But this idea that this character in Low can create a character in Alone, and the adventure that is shared there, it's just in a different way. You're almost using this like dream reality type thing that they do in Little Nightmares 3. But really, you've seen 2 different ways of doing it. Now, like the jury's kind of still out on Little Nightmares 3. We don't know. The game just came out, so we don't know how well it's going to sell. These games have always, I think, done rather well for what they are. The budgets have never been outrageous, and the games have actually really performed well, right? So I feel like you can always kind of go back to that well of ideas. Now, I'll say ideas in terms of the story and the themes and the power, and because again, like 1 and 2 kind of have their own things going on, and 3 was very different. And I said this in my review, I actually kind of appreciated that about 3. I think they're onto something. Not necessarily like you have to take this and keep running with it, but like I think Supermassive showed at least with the concept that you can do this, that you can take this and just do something else next time, okay? So that's the element of, and I think that really all kind of stems from that. Like you can always create new monsters, I think like the visuals were on point, and I think in that way, even Supermassive kind of understood it. The baby doll, in the beginning, or the lady that's like watching through all the cameras. They've shown the ability that they can create these kind of creatures and humans and all this kind of jazz. So all of that stuff, I think, would kind of be on team bring it back, run it back one more time. Now, there is, and I said this in my review, there is an element where they cannot run it back when it comes to, I think, the structure. I think the structure of these games has either kind of run its course, or, because I said, going from like Little Nightmares 1 and 2, there was a very clear step. You saw that in 2, with just really how the game acted, how the movement felt, how the way of incorporating different chase scenes, like the way puzzles kind of evolved from 1 to 2. Like there was a lot of work there. And 3, when people talk about that whole, like buy the books and just it felt kind of too samey. And I said this too, like it really felt that way with the gameplay. The amount of times that you're pushing a door open, the amount of times that you're opening a vent and pulling the other one through. You do it what seems to be 100 times in a 3-hour game. It was too much, so I'm not dissing the length. I think that is kind of also like a symbol of what Little Nightmares is. Like, you don't want these games to be 10, 15 hours. You don't want some weird like open world thing. Like, think about like Hollow Knight Silksong, right? And how they have expanded the world and taking side quests and stuff. That works for Hollow Knight. I don't think, not that Little Nightmares has tried it, right? Not to like condemn them for something they didn't do. But I guess I'm saying, there is a structure. There is moving left to right and up and down. You kind of have to keep a lot of that stuff the same, right? The size disparity, Little Nightmares is a thing, and you got to keep that thing as similar as you can, and you do have to keep, the length. Again, you can't be making this game a 10, 15-hour game when it really does work as like a 3 to 5 hour game, okay? But what does need to change is you have to have some now innovation in terms of I guess they tried combat. I want to say like 3 times. There was like 3 fighting sequences. I think the first 2, you are trapped in a room and enemies come at you one at a time, and one of you is going to shoot it, and the other is going to use the wrench to finish it off. It is very simplistic, it is very formulaic, and I'm not saying like I'm sitting here with like all these ideas in my head. I mean, you just have to kind of shake up the structure of it a little bit more. And I would actually say just go back really to Little Nightmares 2, because I even think, I said this in my review, the puzzles, I mean, I'm very stupid when it comes to puzzles. The puzzles in this game were very easy. The only thing that was hard about Little Nightmares 3 is there were a handful of times, maybe 2, 3, 4 times, where it wasn't very clear of like, oh, you can actually climb up on this thing. But once you did, you knew exactly where to go. It's just you didn't actually know you could climb on it. And that, I think, is actually what was kind of lacking. Not making like that hard or anything, but having maybe a little bit more complexity when it comes to the puzzles, maybe stretching them out, making different things longer. How about we have kind of a 2 or 3 phase chase scene instead of 1 phase, and when we're doing that way we don't have to open 60 doors. Now we can open 50 doors instead, right? And I say it as a joke, but just, to cut down on some of the repetitiveness that this game introduced, cut that down and add it somewhere else, right? Maybe add, even like so many of the rooms I wanted to stop and like look at, and I quickly realized like a lot of them were not worth it. And that really hurt me, because I think that was something very special and something that you got in 1 and 2, because it actually was more condensed. I feel like you're not going through as many rooms in Little Nightmares 1 and 2 as you do in 3, but it's not a better thing going through triple the rooms in 3 as you do in 1 and 2, because a lot of those rooms don't have meaning. A lot of those rooms are just a vent to open. A lot of those rooms are just a door to push. A lot of those rooms are just a room to get you from the first room to the third room, and it's just the middle one, right? Versus Little Nightmares 1 and 2, it felt like rooms had personality. It felt like rooms had story. So I know I'm going off, and I actually feel like I'm getting deeper here than I did in my actual review of this game, but I think that hopefully that kind of sends the message of what I'm trying to say here. It needs that extra complexity, make rooms have meaning, right? Add some backstory. Again, like emphasize or stretch out some parts of the game so that you can eliminate some of the more repetitive, elements of the game. That is where I will say, like, and Reanimal is going to have to be fighting that, and I think from the demo that people are playing now, people are really, really happy about it. I think Reanimal will be able to do it. And, look, and I don't want to, it's not just a bashing session. Actually, I think I've been pretty fair to Supermassive. I think a lot of this could have been just safety things, right, where they just said, hey, we want to keep it safe. We're just testing. Like, do we even know how to do a Little Nightmares game? I want to believe that, because now I want to believe that when you go to Little Nightmares 4, you can take the lessons learned from this. You can do it. You had some building blocks, right, that were kind of set, and now you take that next step, just like originally, 1 to 2. I want them to be able to do it, and I want to believe that, right? Because there needs to be that willingness to shake up the formula. I don't think people are going to accept another Little Nightmares 3. And honestly, they're not going to accept that with Reanimal either. And like I said, I feel like Reanimal is kind of doing well, at least from the demo that people were doing, where it feels like that actual next step. Little Nightmares 3, I felt like was doing things different with, again, like the story and how they emphasized that, but everything else was just so by the books, right? They didn't really flex any kind of iteration or change. And even with the story, it's just a different story. I mean, technically, it literally is different, but it's not reinventing how you tell stories. Not that it really needs to. It's really, like I said, it's the gameplay. So, look, I mean, in terms of the future, I feel like, well, Supermassive, I feel it's just that chosen studio, unless they kind of get it taken away from them. Here's the thing, like, I don't think Little Nightmares 3 is bad enough, or even bad at all, to be honest with you, to justify saying, all right, we gave you your one chance and you messed it up, so we're taking it and we'll give it somewhere else. I think the franchise will continue, and the franchise probably will just continue at Supermassive. And that's kind of, if I was in charge, that would kind of just be my mindset, where I would say, all right, you get one more try, right? And just show us that you can take the next. It has to, fill in. It has to be part of the Little Nightmares franchise, but show us you can take a step from 3 to 4, just like Tarzer did with 1 to 2, right? You have to show that you can take that step. And if you can't take that step, then after 4, either we call it or we take it away from you and we give it to somebody else. That is kind of how I would do it, and I imagine that's how they'll do it. If there's ever news on this, of course, I'll be covering it on the channel as well. Let me know what you think. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.